There's something deeply strange about the way money works in America. The harder you work, the more taxes you pay. But for some of the wealthiest people in the country, the opposite is often true. In fact, many billionaires legally pay a lower effective tax rate than middle-class families. Not because they're hiding money, not because they're breaking the law, and not because the IRS made a mistake. They pay less because the system treats wealth differently than work. Think about that for a second. A teacher, an engineer, or a small business owner can end up paying a higher percentage of their income than someone worth hundreds of millions of dollars. How is that possible? How can two people make enormous amounts of money and play by completely different tax rules? The answer takes us into a world of capital gains, asset-backed loans, inherited wealth, and a handful of tax provisions that most people have never even heard of. And once you see how those rules actually work, you'll realize something uncomfortable. The system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. If you're like most people, your money comes from a paycheck. You go to work, you provide a service. Your employer pays you a salary, and the government takes their cut before you ever see a dime. This is called ordinary income. And ordinary income is taxed on a progressive scale. In the US, that scale currently goes from 10% at the bottom all the way up to 37% at the top. So the more you earn from working, the higher your marginal rate climbs. Now, meet Brian. Brian doesn't have a salary. Brian has assets. Brian owns stocks, real estate, and equity in a few private businesses. And when Brian makes money, it doesn't come from a paycheck. It comes from selling those assets at a profit. That profit is called a capital gain. And if Brian held that asset for more than a year before selling it, that gain is taxed at the long-term capital gains rate, which maxes out at 20%, not 37%, 20. So at the very top of the income ladder, someone earning $1 million from a salary pays up to 37 cents on every dollar. Someone earning $1 million from selling an appreciated asset pays 20 cents on every dollar. Same $1 million, very different bill. And that gap right there is where the whole thing starts. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, because the capital gains tax is annoying to the wealthy in one specific way. You only pay it when you sell. And if you're smart, you don't sell. Because here's the mechanism that almost nobody talks about. The wealthy don't need to sell their assets to access their wealth. They just borrow against them. Here's how it works. Let's say you own $100 million in stock. You don't sell the stock because selling triggers a taxable event. Instead, you walk into a bank and you use that stock as collateral for a low-interest loan. The bank gives you tens of millions of dollars in cash. You pay no tax on that cash because it's not income, it's a loan. You use that cash to fund your lifestyle, your next investment, your yacht, whatever. And then, eventually, when you die, and this is the part that should genuinely make you pause, your heirs inherit your stock portfolio at its current market value, not at what you paid for it, at what it's worth now. This completely erases the embedded capital gains that accumulated over your entire lifetime. The IRS calls this the step up in basis. The rest of us should probably just call it what it is, a multi-generational tax-free inheritance mechanism hidden inside the tax code. Think about what this means in practice. A family could build $1 billion portfolio over decades, borrow against it to fund 3 generations of luxury living, never pay capital gains tax on the appreciation, and then pass the whole thing to their kids, completely reset. Meanwhile, someone making $85,000 a year is getting taxed at 22% on every incremental dollar they earn over a certain threshold. The person borrowing against $1 billion portfolio paid nothing. The person grinding a 9-to-5 paid 22 cents on every dollar they earned above the bracket floor. Same country, very different math. And before you say, well, the rich pay more in total dollars, yes. Technically, that's true. Someone who earns 50 million pays more dollars in taxes than someone who earns 80,000. But effective rate is what tells the real story. Because if a billionaire pays 8% and you pay 22%, the billionaire is keeping 92 cents of every dollar and you're keeping 78. The dollar gap is irrelevant. The percentage is everything, and the percentage is structurally tilted in one direction. Now let's add one more layer to this, because the story isn't complete without talking about carried interest. And I know that sounds like finance jargon designed to make your eyes glaze over, but stick with me because this one is genuinely unhinged when you see it clearly. Carried interest is the compensation structure used by private equity managers and hedge fund managers. These are people whose literal job is to manage other people's money. And in most industries, if you get paid for doing a job, that's called income. It gets taxed as income. But in the investment management world, fund managers take a percentage of the profits they generate, typically around 20%, and that compensation is classified not as ordinary income, but as a capital gain, even though it was earned. Even though it was compensation for a professional service, these managers can earn hundreds of millions of dollars annually and pay the 20% capital gains rate instead of the 37% income rate. The justification is that they're taking risk. And okay, there's a version of that argument worth hearing, but the guy working in a factory also takes risk. He risks his time, his health, and his career security every single day, and nobody's giving him the capital gains rate. This loophole has survived decades of political debate, not because it's defensible on merit, but because the people who benefit from it have the resources to make sure it stays. There was a period where eliminating carried interest was on the table legislatively, and it died quietly, the way inconvenient things tend to do. So here's the situation you're actually in, whether you knew it or not. The tax code was designed in an era where most wealth was earned through wages. But over the last several decades, as the economy has shifted, as asset prices have exploded, and as investment vehicles have become more sophisticated, the gap between how earned income and investment income gets treated has widened dramatically. And the people with the most political influence are also the people who benefit most from keeping that gap exactly where it is. None of this means you stop working. None of this means the system is going to collapse. But here's what it does mean practically. Because there are a few things you can actually do with this information. 1, understand what type of income you're generating. Ordinary income gets taxed hardest. Tax-advantaged accounts like a 401k or a Roth IRA are your most effective tool for reducing that burden while you build wealth. 2, if you're investing in a taxable brokerage account, holding positions for more than a year before selling is a meaningful decision, not just a preference. That's the difference between your short-term rate and your long-term rate. And depending on your bracket, that gap can be enormous. 3, be skeptical of income as your only wealth-building strategy. Wages are the most heavily taxed form of income in existence. Building assets, even slowly, starts to change the math over time. 4, when someone tells you the wealthy pay more, ask more. More dollars, sure. But more as a percentage of their actual wealth? Usually no. 5, the step up in basis and carried interest aren't things most people know exist. Now you do. Share this information because the system running in the background benefits from the people it impacts most not understanding how it works. And that's not a conspiracy. That's just incentives. Because here's the final gut punch. The tax code isn't some neutral mathematical document that fell from the sky. It's a document that gets written, revised, and defended by people. And the people with the most influence over it also happen to be the people it benefits most. That's not cynicism. That's just how incentive structures work. So I want to hear where you land on this. Do you think, A, this is an outdated structure that genuinely needs reform, and it's only a matter of time before it happens? B, the system is working exactly as it was designed and meaningful change is basically impossible? Or C, none of this matters because You're too busy paying rent to have strong opinions about capital gains rates. Drop your take in the comments because this one tends to split people right down the middle. And that divide is probably the most honest thing you'll see all week.